go from there. Awesome.
Very good. I'll get it going then. Let me share my screen. I wanted to tell y'all as I do that that I was noticing this morning that parts of the West Coast there were anticipating hundreds, temperatures up into the 100-degree range. And boy, this presentation is right on point for that. So, I tell you, I was just down in East Texas last week, and my goodness, the humidity was way up there. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
And can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, it should say reducing risks of heat illness. Okay. All right. Well, this is definitely a timely subject. This particular presentation was prepared by CalOsh, but is used for all of my presentations. It's very general in a lot of ways. So check and see if anybody else came in there. Let me see. No. Okay. Very good. Okay. Well, let's get started. It's a fact that heat illness can kill you. I have seen a couple of these cases, seen these types of injuries, and it's just an awful set of circumstances to have somebody that gets into this situation. So we're going to talk about, more Americans die annually from heat-related causes than from tornadoes, earthquakes, and floods all combined. So that's saying something. It's a pretty prominent problem. And I'll tell you that OSHA has very specific requirements, and I want to make sure that you've communicated this to all your employees. I have submitted a copy of this presentation to Keith that has it in both English and Spanish, just in case you have a need for that later when you're going back over this with your employees. Okay?
Beautiful.
Heat illness occurs usually when your body temperature keeps, retains and keeps heat more often than it loses. You're at a greater risk of heat illness, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when you're dehydrated. You're not used to working in the heat. Cell that comes in, a horrible heat wave that comes in. You're in.
Hey, Jim.
Yes.
Jim, we have some other guests trying to join in, but they're not able to get in.
Okay.
Waiting for the host to allow them in.
I see. Let me see what I can find out here. Okay, give me just a minute while I work through this problem.
Is that the lake you want to be fishing on?
Man, I tell you, it's the lake right up in Colorado. I was just there last weekend. That is absolutely gorgeous lake up just around the Buena Vista area out west of Colorado Springs. It is some kind of beautiful up there. I found it. I apologize. Okay, I think we got our last two in, I think. And I apologize for that. Got one more. There we go.
All right.
I apologize for that.
Fuck you.
It's completely my problem, and I apologize for that.
Shut up.
You know, we were just starting here with heat illnesses and kind of talking about where these come from. And of course, the obvious one is being dehydrated, not used to working in the heat. You guys are on schedule for some 100-degree temps very soon, I think. In poor health is sometimes we forget about this one. We'll have a situation where an employee is out with maybe even a long-term illness, maybe going through treatment of some sort, maybe having some new medications, things like that. And if you've ever had heat illness before, where you've actually gone down with heat problems, you know, you actually really get sick and that sort of thing, it makes you much more susceptible later on to having heat illness with very little heat to kick it off. So the unfortunate part of this is that you can have like a heat stress or a heat stroke situation, and 10 years from now still have a problem getting out in the heat. This is a long-term situation for some people. I've seen it in the career before, where a person could no longer work outside. They had to be brought inside and work the rest of their career. So this can be very serious. Some of the symptoms that we have to cover here is discomfort. We all have that, but some of the more serious ones that you need to be really aware of are the ones with the headache is usually one of the beginning ones, the poor concentration. The cramping is something that can go with that, but the more dangerous ones are the dizziness, the loss of coordination. I have seen people that you see stumble, you see them start to wobble a little bit, and the employee that's under stress cannot seem to communicate very well. You'll have blurry vision and confusion. The real serious situations are lack of sweating, your rise in heart rate, fainting, and seizures. Okay, there's basically three types. Most of us have had that first one in the list there, the heat cramps. The heat cramps can definitely cause a problem, but most commonly those are not very serious. There's heat exhaustion, which is more serious, but usually recoverable from, and sometimes heat stroke can be very life-threatening and can kill if you don't take immediate action. And we'll talk about some of those immediate actions in just a minute. Heat cramps, these are just muscle spasms in the arms and legs. Sometimes it's in the stomach, not necessarily. It's caused by losing so much fluid that you're having a hard time keeping up, and the lack of fluid causes muscle cramping. It can be very painful, and the best way to get rid of those is to drink an electrolyte solution of some sort, along with plenty of water. Sometimes even help. I've heard that eating the fruits help a lot. These usually occur at home after a really hot day and a lot of stress. You get home and all of a sudden you start cramping. That's something that can be avoided with lots of fluid intake and staying on top of your electrolytes. The heat exhaustion is a little bit more serious. This is definitely covered directly from not drinking enough replacement fluid. The body's internal temperature sometimes gets overworked and starts creeping up. This is usually for a person's internal temperature. If you were to take their temperature, uh, so you take them into a medical facility and you take their temperature, it'd be up close to 100 degrees. So it's almost like having the flu or some other infection. So a lot of these symptoms include extreme weakness or fatigue. I've seen people fall asleep standing up that's got some of this heat exhaustion problem. Usually they have a lot of nausea, headaches, that sort of thing. The prevention on this is to cool this person down and get them to a cool location. I would recommend getting them to a vehicle or a building that has air conditioning. Having that building or a vehicle that's air conditioned will help a great deal. Loosen their clothing, get them plenty to drink, especially a little bit of Gatorade, but I wouldn't overforce the Gatorade. Plenty of water would be really preferable. And then if for some reason the illness does not straighten out in a matter of 10 minutes or so, you need to be calling your supervisor and asking for further direction. Okay, now let's talk about heat stroke. This is where things get real serious and the body has completely deleted its supply of water and salt. And, the person earlier in the day may have experienced some cramps. I have seen this mistaken as a heart attack. And I'll tell you, we had an ambulance called out to a location one time. The guy was grasping his chest, acting like he was having a heart attack, hurt, had cramping in the chest area, was very, very in distress and was encountering a lot of pain in his chest. They could have swore it was a heart attack. When the ambulance got there and hauled him to the hospital, they figured out that he was not having a heart attack, but it was more of a heat stroke situation. So the concern there is you don't know as a worker what's going on. You need to call 911 immediately and get them taken care of. But in the meantime, while you're waiting on that, if they are conscious, you need to be getting them some type of, you need to get them in a cool place, you need to loosen their clothing, you need to get some wet, cool cloth laid on their face, neck, especially their neck, that cools them off quicker than anything. And if available, dunk them in water, up to their waist or something, or get a garden hose and spray them down. I'm telling you, if somebody has where they're not sweating, they've got the brilliant red skin, they're vomiting, they're having a really advanced symptoms such as seizures or convulsions, and maybe even passed out. Of course, somebody that's passed out, you can't give them anything to drink, but it's so important to get them cooled off as quickly as possible. If you wait until the emergency people arrive to try to cool them down, it may be too late. This person may not make it. So it's very important, these when someone starts feeling, they start cramping, they start having some of these problems, intervene early, jump on it early, get them plenty of water, plenty of Gatorade, whatever the type of situation may allow for. Get them that stuff early so that it doesn't get to this situation that's presented on the screen right now with heat stroke. The whole point is never let it get this far. If it does get this far, you're in a dire emergency, 911, and you're going to have to take some pretty elaborate measures with a lot of water on them, a lot of coolness. Another suggestion I'll make is if someone has a cold bottle of water, a cold drink of any sort that's in a bottle, lay it on their neck, especially in the back of their neck, and get that will certainly help and help them get cooled down quickly. So let's talk about two of the best defenses against the heat are getting out of the sun and finding a cool resting place. When you start feeling that overheat and need to cool down. Now the feelings you'll get when you approach that situation is you start getting chills, which is the opposite thing you would think of, but when you start getting the chills down your back, you're starting to overheat. Drink the cool fresh water throughout the day. Now it says 4 8-ounce cups per hour. For me, I have to stop and think about it a minute. How much is that? Well, let's take a 32-ounce soda from the grocery store, from the convenience store. Everybody knows what a 32-ounce cup looks like. Or if you carry a tumbler around with you that's 32 ounces, you've got to drink that full of water or a combination of water and Gatorade every hour. That's 32 ounces per ounce during hot weather. That's how much you lose to sweating. And if you wait until you're thirsty, it's already too late. You're already too far into it. And I would also suggest another prevention measure is when you look at your forecast for that day and it shows a really hot and humid day, I would get out there and I would start drinking water early. Front load your system with water on the way to the job site. After you get to the job site before starting work, front load that while you're not near as hot. That's easier on your stomach and easier on your system. Okay, here's some do's and don'ts. Please know where your location of your closest drinking water supplies are. Make sure you have it with you when you go out to a job site. Make sure it is with you and ready to go before you leave to go to your job site. Choose water over soda, and I can't emphasize this enough. There are so many choices for people to go by and stop and get something cold to drink on their way to work and after they get to work and they want to stop by a convenience store. Any of these energy drinks actually complicate the hydration process. In this case, Red Bull could give you wings. It make it worse enough that you might not make it through the day. So I would suggest staying away from the high caffeine, high energy drinks. Stick with water and or a little bit of electrolyte solution. High energy drinks, high caffeine drinks are absolutely the wrong thing to have on a really hot day out there.
Now, Jim,
yes?
So when we're saying a really hot day, that's basically stating that it's 92 degrees and hotter for that 8 ounces per hour. The 32 ounces per hour, correct?
That's correct.
And then anything below that, we're basically looking at 16 ounces per hour or thereabout.
That's correct. You can actually dial it back a little bit, but I'll tell you, some jobs require different clothing to be worn, different PPE. If you're working in a specific position that has to have FR rated clothing because you're going to be working in or around electricity that day, those folks have to increase their electrolyte and increase the water content more than myself wearing a little polo shirt out there doing my job today.
Correct.
I promise you, different clothing will change the situation. Not only that, but the heat also. But yes, when the forecast is over 92 degrees, and in some cases high humidity makes it even worse. So picking a temperature where you have to drink a certain amount of fluid is kind of arbitrary in that anything over 90 degrees and your humidity is about 40%, getting up anything in the high 50s or higher than that will I've seen people go down with heat stroke at 80 degrees when the humidity was 80%. So when the real high humidity situations come in, that can also be a problem.
Right.
The next one on this list is never drink alcohol to hydrate. And this is usually a reference to on your way home after a really hot day working out and you have really been under a lot of stress. Stop by the bar or you catch something at home. Be careful about that because that will almost always cause immediate cramping and cause all kinds of issues. And it will give you the opposite effect and you will not hydrate, you'll actually dehydrate and it can complicate things. Always know who and how to call for help. In the minor cases, you need to talk to your supervisor. In the real serious case, be sure you dial 911 and get a medical on the way. Where allowed, wear light-colored, lightweight clothing. However, there's going to be some cases with PPE where you wear heavier clothing. You don't have any choice. Keep track of your coworkers. And this is something that I can't emphasize enough. Check on your people. Go out. If there's 3 of you at a work site and one of you is out working by themselves, watch that very closely. Check on that other person very routinely in hot situations. Make sure they're doing all right. Make sure you're talking to them. Make sure that they seem to be doing okay. Be really careful. Watch your coworkers. And sometimes the person that's under heat stress and having some issues can't identify that themselves and need somebody else to identify, hey, you're slurring your speech, you're staggering a little bit, I saw you stumble, you know, maybe we need to stop for a minute and take a quick breather and get in the shade for a few minutes. And of course, like I said, please talk to your immediate supervisor about this if you have any questions. If you are brand new to working in the heat, you need to be sure and communicate that to your direct supervisor. If you started new medication that might impact this, we're talking blood pressure medicines, diabetic medicines, things along that could be affecting your ability to sweat appropriately and retain fluid appropriately, that can put you in extreme danger for heat stress situations. So be sure that, especially if you're new or you start new medication, do some stuff. It's really nobody's business what you're taking, but just tell them, hey, I've got some issues today. I don't, you know, I'm just letting you know that I'm going to be taking it easy. Coming back the first day after a flu is a real good example. A lot of people are completely dehydrated after having the stomach flu, after having some kind of intestinal problem. You're extremely dehydrated. That's going to put you at a high degree of risk. Just be sure that the supervisors kind of have some clue of what's going on. Get your doctor's advice. Talk to your doctor. If you have illnesses like diabetes and other systemic health issues, and you've got heat coming up that's going to be a really hot project, I suggest talking to your doctor or nurse at your doctor's office about how best to handle that, because I will tell you, a diabetic, full-blown diabetic has to handle their fluid intake completely differently than an employee that's completely healthy. They have to have different liquid intake amounts, and you've got to be really careful what you drink. Taking medications and over-the-counter drugs, there are certain medications that can cause us complications. So if you're on several medications, please talk to your doctor about it on high heat stress situations. Next time you're in, talk to them about that. And this next one is near and dear to my heart because I'm on a low salt diet, and a lot of us have been told to cut out the salt. Well, that just complicates things when it comes to heat stress. So there are ways around that, but I would not tell everybody they have to consume Gatorade. Be careful about that because you've got people out there that have certain health conditions that if they were to drink electrolyte solution similar to Gatorade, Powerade, some of those things, it's going to spike their blood pressure and actually cause problems. If their doctor has told them not to drink electrolyte solution, make sure you have plenty of water out there for them, okay? Tell them to push the water, push the water. It's not required to have Gatorade, although you would hope that people would mix it 50-50, but Just be careful about what you mandate on electrolyte solutions. If you're working in hot weather conditions, Echelon has to provide you fresh, pure, cool drinking water throughout the day. Take it with you. Access the shade or an equally cool spot for 5 minutes at a time to rest and cool down is very important. Oftentimes that's just your vehicle that you went out to the job site with, but it can be other locations. If the temperature is 95 or higher, especially California mandates cool down periods of at least 10 minutes will be available every 2 hours. With the higher the humidity, the worse this problem is. Yes, sir?
Let me jump in real quick. I just want to get in there and state Echelon is to provide water for our guys and our laborers, not for the subs. That is the subs' responsibility to supply their own. And if they don't supply it, make sure they go and get it. Thank you.
You bet. That's a very good point. Training on how to work safely in the heat, that's part of what we've been talking about here, but it's also on the job site. Sometimes you really got to get a hold of somebody and tell them, hey, you've been out here a little too long. Maybe we need a 5-minute break and go stand in the shade and let's talk for a while. Make sure you're doing okay. Let's get some water. Okay. I know me personally, I'm kind that will work right straight through a break. And if you've got employees like that too, sometimes you need to step in and that's part of that training that is provided on the job. And of course, this training here that we just went over is part of that training too. Regardless of the outdoor temperature, your safety is always a concern. And this is just a statement from Echelon to your employees. And that's it for the presentation. Just want to ask anybody if anybody has any questions or if there's some items that we did not cover that you'd like to spend a few more minutes on. I tell you, the issue of medications now in the workplace, a lot of employees are taking a lot of medications out there, and that can affect them differently on the job. And putting heat stress in that is an issue. You need to be able to recognize it out on the job site. So watch your employees closely and communicate with them frequently. Does anybody have any questions? Keith, do you have any other comments?
I would actually just like to comment, and the other telltale sign is that you're not getting enough fluid is if you're not urinating enough through a hot day. That means you're sweating more than what you're actually taking in. So it's a good identifier as well to say, all right, well, I need to get more liquids.
That's a good point. One of the classic symptoms is a real dark color urine. That can also be caused by medication and a few other things. But if that's not normal for you and you go to the restroom and real dark urine is a very telltale sign you're not getting enough fluid. You have to push the fluid. And sometimes you have to push the fluid with each employee. Sometimes really talk to them about it on a really hot day. And today is one of those days. I know there's some portions of California predicted to be over 100 degrees, so you got to be careful.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'd like to add one other quick tip for working in the heat and in the sun. You know, having a big floppy hat that you can wear or add to a hard hat, or if it's on a job where you don't need a hard hat, if you wear a hat that provides a lot of shade. Another thing is long sleeves actually keep you cooler in working in the sun. If you're wearing a loose fitting shirt that covers your skin, then the sun's not beating on your skin, and that can be really good. And then one of my go-tos was always just to have like a bandana or a rag that I would just wet and just put it around my neck. And that does a really good job of just keeping the temperature down and keeping it bearable as well.
Very good point.
That is good. The part that I want to emphasize is You did touch on it, and I just want to emphasize it as people who are not accustomed to working in the, and when they get out there that first couple of days as they're trying to acclimate. I personally have seen it. I mean, I watched a man almost die. Everybody on the crew, you know, the bravado of men, we think that it's funny that somebody is weaker than everyone else, and no one took it seriously until you didn't have a choice but to take it seriously. And by that point, it is definitely too late. Everybody on this call is in a position of leadership when it comes to safety and taking care of our team. And, you know, we are the GC. We have subs that are working for us. We need to make sure that, you know, their foremen, you know, all the way down to their laborers are being monitored as well. Let them be entangled up in the job, and let's take, you know, just a portion of our attention and make sure that we're focusing on the well-being of their teams as well. So that if we see something, we can say something, because it happens so fast. When it happened to me, it happened in, I don't know, maybe five or 10 minutes. I was 4 or 5 hours working out in the sun. I made an extremely bonehead move. I actually put a black plastic trash bag over me to keep the water off of me while I was wet grinding in Palm Springs at, you know, 100 degrees. And all of a sudden it just happened instantly. And I was dizzy, and I was like going in and out of consciousness. And, you know, if there's no one around to help you, it's a scary moment. But if we take that leadership role, we can definitely ensure that all of the knowledge you learned today takes 5 or 10 minutes to explain to somebody if you see someone who's not taking care of themselves or someone who's not monitoring their team. That's kind of the point I wanted to emphasize, was that it could be something as simple as being new to the heat.
Paul, that's extremely good information. And I think the buddy system and keeping track of your employees, making sure that you're communicating with them is that all those points made perfect. And those folks from the California office out there chiming in about the long sleeves and are spot on. You know, there's a lot of things that we could have covered in this presentation, and sometimes there's a very job specific situation that you need to discuss with your employees when you get out to the job site. So about the heat, about the location to go cool down, have those discussions with your employees at the job site or before they leave for the job site. Make sure that that's in full discussion so that nobody is thinking, gosh, what do I do? They need to know that. Keith, is there anything else?
I believe we got it covered, Jim, on my end. I don't know, does anybody else have anything?
I guess just a comment. One time I wanted to use those Tyvek suits, those jumpsuits. Stupid me, I forgot, just like when Mr. Paul was talking about, it's all plastic. So I was sweating my body off, and by the 10 o'clock hit, I mean, I was feeling very, very dizzy. I'm just thankful that I had my 2 cents, you know, before I lost consciousness. I took it off. I started drinking some water, went into the shade and tried to avoid, you know, the sun, because I started seeing some stars, you know? So,
Oh,
yeah,
totally. I think the part where we screw up is we think that if we can just power through the next 10 minutes, you know, to
that's
make it to that break or whatever before we stop and get the water, that it makes us better at our job. But then if you're down for 2 hours in the shade so that you can feel good enough to get up and move around again, you didn't do yourself any good by working the extra 10 minutes. So, I mean, everybody has to know themselves as well. But in that moment, we're glad that you paid attention to how bad that was for you.
yeah. So I guess proper wardrobe, I guess.
Awesome.
Awesome. Keith, are we at the end here, you think?
I believe so. Everybody good? All right, let's make sure we look out for everybody out there and our teams and wherever we're at, whether it's here in Houston, California, Dallas, Sacramento, Stockton, it doesn't matter where we're at. Just let's keep an eye out on our crews and our guys, and let's all be safe and healthy.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks,
you
Nick.
guys. Thank you
Thank
guys
you.
very much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good
Thank you.
one.
Bye.